I'm just gonna briefly give everybody who's here tonight a quick overview of some safety, just so everybody's aware. Thank you all for being here tonight. I want to point out that EWEB management and subject matter experts are here in the room and virtually, and the meeting is live, streamed, and recorded. For those who are going to speak tonight, please speak loudly and clearly. The public testimony part will begin in about 15 minutes, but I just want to give you a few other pieces of background. There's the public testimony is welcome. Sign-up forms are available at the front of the room. If folks haven't signed up yet, please make sure you're signed up. Visitor access is limited to the board meeting room and the restrooms, which are out the hall here. In the event of emergency, please follow all instructions given by staff. And if an evacuation is required, please proceed to the nearest safe exit. There are 3 of them in this room, and evacuate away from the building to the farthest points of the parking lots. And with that, we're going to do an agenda check. Any items from commissioners on the agenda?
So a clarification question,
Please.
So storm debrief, we have questions and comments about the storm. You wanted those to come to the regular scheduled agenda or items?
I would prefer that those come during the storm debrief.
Okay.
Anything else on the agenda? Good. Items from board members and general manager. Sir?
Yeah, I just have a question on the background information we were given. Polly gave us on second source. I noticed now that last time I heard it was 90 million. Now it's 100 million. How did that happen?
I think it's been in the capital plan at 100 million for quite some time.
90 last time.
We'd have to go back and look at the numbers.
But it was a 70, 90, and I hadn't seen 100. Maybe I've seen your moment. Just wondered how that.
We haven't changed the silver scale of it. Originally, it was less than that back in 2016, I know as well. And just through escalation and inflation, it's gone up.
I just want to make sure that I'm communicating with people that $10 million. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I attended the celebration of business. Support EWEB in being in that meeting. And then I had a contact from a constituent who had some concerns about payments that I just wanted to raise really quickly. They seem to be told, and I did check in with Anne, that it wasn't the case, but somehow they got this impression that if they leave the check in the box and it's before 9, or if it's after 9, then it's if they say that they put it in there and they leave their check, that can count. It's just right now we don't have, an easy way. It just makes sense to me that we make sure that all of the staff and such know that that is an option for them, and that so they don't get their power turned off. Again, everybody's experience is a little bit different, so maybe that's not an issue. They were also a bit upset about Walmart pay. Apparently, one of the options that we have is to pay at Walmart, but charges $2. Those are the people that are kind of most at risk already. Now we're asking them to for $2. If there was interest in talking with that about that further, just wanted to raise that in case other commissioners had concerns about that, because people who are already not able to be banked and now are in a terrible situation, that seems like another hindrance to them. So it's only $2, and that seems light to some, but it can be really detrimental to others.
We can't hear you. I'm sorry.
It's
hard to hear you. Sorry.
Sorry. I'll speak up.
Thank you.
And then I think that we had talked originally about Friday, that we were not going to do shutoffs on Fridays, and it's recently been updated that we don't do shutoffs in the mornings on Fridays, which to me kind of negates the whole purpose of not shutting off on Friday, because if you are getting shut off on Friday and you can't actually do anything about it because you're at your job, then you're going to be shut off all weekend long. So if there was interest from other commissioners, I'd like to talk about that, maybe how our plans go. Those are the 3 things, especially in light of the recent, storm and situation. I know that we're gonna have customers that are going to have difficulty paying because they're gonna have higher bills, and I just want to know what we're doing to make sure your bills, because this is going to be a tough situation for here.
I had the opportunity to do a ride along after the storm. I know some of the other commissioners did too. That was really, it was good to see firsthand a lot of the damage and destruction, and also to see the crews hard at work out there. So I appreciate that opportunity. And then also I attended the evening open house at Hilliard Community Center for the College Hill water storage project. And it was a small but talkative group that showed up, and it was great to hear. Folks seemed very engaged and eager to participate in the process.
Thank you. I also attended the celebration of business and did get a round of applause for all of the people that helped respond to the ice. You got a nice round of applause. I had a chance also to interact with some of our crews during the ice storm. One of the things that jumped out to me was one of the crew members came up and thanked me for buying the new bucket truck last month. They said that was really good, and they were really happy that they got the smaller one, because a lot of times they have a hard time getting the big trucks down some of these smaller roads and access areas. So he said, thank you for approving that consent calendar item last month. And I said, Barrett, you're still welcome. Thank you for getting me off the line. So that's it for me.
Any items you want to share?
I was just gonna respond to Commissioner Carlson's question. We can reiterate back to commissioners what our policies are relative to payment. There are a number of ways you can do same-day payment. The Walmart is just one option. There's several others. I will mention those, and the fact that those typically get to that point 50 days after they're originally due. And so what those policies are, including when and how we can shut off, there are certain things that override that. If we're going to have a hot weekend or a cold weekend or a holiday weekend, there are certain exceptions to that, and we'll just summarize that back to commissioners as a follow-up if that works for you.
Great. All right. Anything via correspondence you want to speak to, Frank?
There were two pieces of correspondence. The first one, I was just going to pass the baton to Deborah Hart for a moment. So without looking over my shoulder, I'll just pass it that way.
It was a good guess. I am right behind you. Yes, this evening we have a piece of correspondence around the grants program. And I just wanted to introduce you all to our grants specialist, Tegan DeBolt. She's here this evening. And so feel free to ask her any questions about the material we provided, anything that that comes to mind, or reach back out at a later date. But I wanted to make sure I put a face with the name that has brought us about $20 million since 2020 in grant funding.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. I think when people look at funding and how we approach it, we want to align that with our strategic priorities. So things around resiliency, developing resources and things like that. It's a perfect alignment. We used it significantly for the watershed recovery work up in the McKenzie Valley to protect our watershed. So Deacon's worth at least $20 million to us right now. Yeah, thank you. The other one was a brief legislative update. As you know, this is the short session. Short sessions used to be for budget realignment. Now they're for a few different items. And if there were any questions, we'd be happy to answer this. It's just now getting started. So potentially more developing on that front. But other than that, President McCray, I didn't have.
I guess I think there was 125 bills introduced today on the short session. Were any of those relevant? Do you know if any of those relevant?
There could be, I don't know if Jason's on the line. There were a couple that we're keeping our eye on. One of them in particular is around immunity for the use of public spaces. That's one that I believe that was one of the ones that was introduced.
Thanks. All right, we'll move to public input. I'm going to provide a little bit of background before we dive into public input, just for anybody who's providing input. We have 10 folks signed up tonight. So welcome to the public input session. This portion of the agenda is dedicated to providing community members an opportunity to address the board about any EWEB topic or issue. We respectfully request that all speakers adhere to our public policy, our public input instructions and code of conduct that are provided during the sign up to speak process. And much of it is up here on the screen. I just want to call out a couple things. We don't typically engage in back and forth. After there's public testimony, there'll be an opportunity for board members to respond, but we just don't have this situation set up to provide a conversation, but highly encourage any of you to reach out to any of us to have a more personal conversation if that's something that you're interested in. And with that, we're going to start with, we have 2 folks on phone and the remainder are here in the room. We'll start with the folks on the phone. So Kathy Ging, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, this is Kathy Ging. EWEB should change its rely on us motto to do not rely on us. Not talking storm outage, you did the best you could, but about promises to ratepayer owners when 100+ ratepayer owners attended EWEB meeting demanding no digital meters. The first opt-in adopted in USA was capriciously changed to opt-out, and then another arbitrary decision by the board without public input to an opt-out being defined as no radio turned on, just having a digital meter. You should have heard Roger Gray when he lied about cybersecurity when board member inquired about it. Although Gray and board had received a copy of a white paper from Israel called Smart Grid Insecurity, and he attended a cyber conference the next month. Key issue is EWEB now forces digitals on all homes when about 5% formally opted out. It is shocking EWEB staff and GM did not promptly halt digital installs after OSU research documented in 2023 by Brian Bull, part-time KLCC reporter and UO assistant journalism prof, that smart meters can be hacked for power grid sabotage. With power grids being increasingly targeted by domestic extremists, researchers at OSU are warning that a basic utility device could be corrupted. Devices called smart meters are commonly used by utilities. They can measure customers' electricity data or remotely shut off power. But the 2 people who did the research, I won't say their long names right now, told KLCC that hackers can use smart meters to cause variations in demand for what's known as a load oscillation attack. If some bad actor essentially were able to coordinate hijacking some meters, it wouldn't take a lot. They could actually propagate this cyber attack into causing physical instabilities in the grid. Okay, and I want to tell you that there are people right now in the community talking to a constitutional attorney to file an injunction against EWEB, not only because of cyber insecurity and 12 pages of fires and explosions that were sent to EWEB 12 years ago, but also because of the health issues. Those of us who are not, affected as much by health issues, we're not so strident about that. But I will tell you, folks, you are going to cause harm and injury to these people, like an 80-year-old woman who called me, and she might be one of the next speakers. So I just want to say that this is an issue that has health issues. It has cybersecurity, privacy. A friend of mine is a Georgetown educated attorney, and he said the first thing that came to mind when I described smart meters was the Fourth Amendment right to privacy. This was reiterated by a woman who wrote an article for the Georgetown Law Review over a decade ago saying privacy is being violated by the wireless technology.
Thanks,
Finally,
Kath.
Dr. Okay, is that it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And next is Aya Cochran.
Hi there, dear Board President McRae and EWEB commissioners. My name is Aya Cochran. I live in Ward 1 and I am a local climate justice organizer and mother. First, I wanted to thank EWEB employees who worked tirelessly in the field to restore power after the recent ice storms. In light of the climate crisis as well as health and equity concerns, it is imperative that we transition off of fossil fuels. However, due to the same climate issues, we are sure to see increases in frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, like the ice storm, that may affect power infrastructure. I ask that EWEB work to increase resilience by engaging in robust community engagement, increasing localized power generation and distribution, investing in batteries and other storage technologies, using smart grid technologies, and prioritizing infrastructure hardening. Today, I would like to focus my testimony on a few of these issues. Locally generated and distributed renewable energy systems mean power generation closer to the point of consumption. This reduces vulnerability to transmission losses in widespread outages, like the ones we just experienced. EWEB should prioritize investments in publicly owned renewable energy generation by leveraging funds from the Inflation Reduction Act and strengthening its solar incentives by taking advantage of programs like the Solar for All program to help low-income customers receive much-needed solar bill savings while increasing resilience. On the topic of storage, I want to encourage EWEB to consider introducing virtual power plants into your next integrated resource plan. VPPs harness the latent potential of households and businesses' thermostats, electric vehicles, appliances, batteries, and solar arrays to support the grid. These devices can be flexibly charged, discharged, or managed to meet grid needs, and along with other measures could help combat mass outages during extreme weather events and have been used successfully in other cities. I personally have multiple appliances that could be integrated into such a system. There is much more that could be said on these topics, but for now, I wanted to thank you all for your time and consideration this evening. And again, thank you to those that helped restore power after the ice storm.
Thank you, Aya. So then we'll move to the folks in the room, and next I have Mindy Stone. That will be followed by Cindy Allen.
Do I just stand here?
Yeah, or at the table, whatever's comfortable for you.
Thank you. My name is Mindy Stone, and I think I'm in Ward 4. I'm an owner / customer of EWEB. I love my analog utility meter. I do not consent to having my analog meter removed and replaced with a digital smart meter. I'm noticing EWEB here and now that I grant EWEB meter readers permission to enter my property to read my meter. EWEB is not authorized to trespass on my property or designate a subcontractor to trespass on my property with the intention to remove my analog meter and replace it with a digital smart meter. You all, as members of EWEB Board of Commissioners, are not granted greater authority over the owners / customers who are customers of EWEB. Each owner / customer has the right to object to products and services that an owner / customer believes is harmful to them, regardless of your opinion. The unique quality of a utility service is that it is, for the most part, a monopoly in that a customer cannot pick and choose from a list of utility competitors for service. The fact that EWEB owners / customers who live up the McKenzie River area will not have their analog meter replaced with a digital smart meter means that forcing a digital smart meter on anyone in any other geographical area of EWEB service area is discriminatory, and the board's action to force a digital meter on any owner / customer is akin to enforcing a mandate. As we all know now, mandates are not laws. This is wrong, and EWEB's board does not have the authority to coerce, force, impose their will or edicts on any utility owner / customer. Finally, I'm sharing with the board a November 2018 Oregon PUC media release document with a statement. Quote, after extensive public process, the PUC require that customers be given a choice to decline smart meter installation, unquote. No PUD can have greater authority over utility customers / owners than the PUC grants any private or municipal utility. I do not consent to replacing my analog meter with a digital smart meter. And I'm just saying you've been noticed. So thank you. And I'm going to hand out this 2018.
Sure, you can hand them to the staff. Yeah, Brad's got it. Perfect. That's
Thank you
great.
very
Thank you.
much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mindy. Next is Cindy, and that'll be followed by Tana Shepherd.
I am a person with extreme sensitivity to RF radiation because of surgical implants after an accident to my head. A letter from my doctor is on file at EWEB. There was a capacity crowd at EWEB in 2013 when Dr. Paul Dart gave his 2-hour presentation. Information derived from an 18-month study by a 6-person medical team. 140 pages, including footnotes, was given to the board. The video is on YouTube. Some of the effects of RF radiation include increased inflammation, changes to the heart and brain, altered endocrine hormone function, especially melatonin needed for sleep, damage to the DNA, increased rates of cancer, diabetes, and obesity, etc. The WHO classifies it as a 2B carcinogen, in the same category as asbestos, lead, and DDT. Shortly after Dr. Dart's presentation, the documentary Take Back Your Power was released. General David Petraeus, state attorney generals, the Prime Minister of British Columbia, doctors, researchers, etc., discussed smart meters and serious concerns regarding health, privacy, Fourth Amendment rights, fires, cybersecurity risk of a centralized grid, to solar flares and hacking, etc. Later in 2013, the EWEB board voted for an opt-in. This was not the decision wanted by the majority of those who spoke at the capacity event, but this option was said to give choice. Opt into a smart meter if wanted one, or keep your analog meter if did not. In 2018, the board changed to an opt-out, and people who did not want a smart meter sent in letters, which I did. Families for Safe Technologies sponsored capacity-attended programs with world-recognized experts, Daphne Tackover, Dr. Martin Pauling, and Josh Jill Soul. An additional program with Dr. Paul Dart and Pete Sorensen, our county commissioner. Videos were sent to EWEB and are also on YouTube. Little about smart meters since 2018, yet last Friday, people get a robocall saying that a smart meter would be installed within 15 days. I do not consent to this. And join with the letters of liability presented earlier to the board by Lisa Oxman. No smart meter and no trespassing signs except for meter reading are posted under my meter, as was suggested by legal consult. Forcing smart meters on people who do not want them does not agree with earlier EWEB commitments.
Thank you. Next is Tana Shepherd, followed by Lisa Oxman.
Right. Hey, people. It's me, Tana Shepherd, otherwise known as EcoChick. I'm here. I haven't been here for a few months. So I just wanted to come back and express my gratitude for grant funding for education in 4J and also for Bethel and Springfield. Thank you, and Mackenzie. Just a quick little update of what's been happening in the education world. one of the best things I'm doing right now is working with the 4J Climate Justice team and 4J with our high school students. And they have a couple of things they're working on, a clothing swap in the next couple of weeks. And I will put out an invitation if you'd like to come. It'll be on Friday the 23rd at Concentric Sky. And they also have an opportunity to speak to the 4J school board to address climate resolution policy and what are we doing about it? Not enough. And then as far as getting out into schools right now, it's kind of the alternative energy time of year. And so wind energy, I have that actually bolstered, a workshop coming up with that. And so we'll have that out in many classrooms this year, more than usual. And then the EV Challenge is back, and we're hoping to bring an event back this year. And so sign up has happened for that. We've received the grant funding. And then also just a couple other things coming up, working with the science team on the regular and also doing some other integration across other subject areas. And our third grade, every third grader in 4J will be reading the stream story, and it is a salmon related thing that ties into tribal history, shared history, as well as water and salmon education. And then this storm has kind of got me thinking about the disaster preparedness, and I think it's time for 4J to say it's like, stop saying it's so scary. And I want to start making some videos to kind of lighten it up and just get the kids thinking about things that they could encourage their families to do, especially reunification plans feel very important to me. We're just wildly underprepared in 4J if the big one happens. So I acknowledge that. First, I'm doing some eco-chick visits, so it's kind of a variety. I put a menu together and teachers are just kind of reaching out for various things that I just kind of tailor to what they're wanting, but it's all water, energy, and climate things. And then kind of an exciting development is I've had a meeting with 4J Grounds, and they're very interested in greening our grounds. And I am very excited about that and having more opportunities to actually work outside of just working with the kids and actually get in with the adults and hopefully make some change that way so we can actually do more for the kids. So again, thank you very much. And yeah, stay tuned for invitations to things. Thank you.
Right, next is Lisa Oxman, followed by Alan.
Good evening. I would like to use a few of my seconds to say thank you. I really appreciate the work hard work that EWEB did to help restore everyone's power who lost power. My name is Lisa. I live at 345 East 34th Place, Eugene, Oregon, 97405. And my account number is listed on this letter of liability, which I hope you did have a chance to get. I gave copies for everyone at the last board meeting. To all EWEB commissioners, including John Brown, Sonia Carlson, Mindy Schlossberg, excuse me if I said your name wrong, John Borowski, and Matt McRae, and the general manager, Frank Lawson. Dear above stated, this is a notice of non-consent to installation of any wireless smart metering device. Lisa Oxman hereby prohibits any electronic or wireless metering device hereafter referred to as a smart meter from being installed in or at my residence of 345 East 34th Place, Eugene, Oregon, 97405. This letter acts as a formal notice, and any liability for damage or harm resulting from these conditions being violated rests with the recipients of this letter, the meter manufacturers, and any subcontractors involved in a smart meter production, installation, or operation. Homeowners have the ultimate authority to decide what technology is installed in their homes, not utilities whose government-protected monopoly prevents residents from choosing a competing utility provider. Smart meters are surveillance devices, and they violate our Fourth Amendment right to privacy in our homes, guaranteed under the United States Constitution. All portions of the political spectrum agree that it is about individual freedom of choice and resident owners' basic property rights. Smart meters have been called into question as a fire hazard, and as such, these devices have been responsible for fires, explosions, and other serious safety problems. Smart meters have caused documented health problems. The bursts of the radiation emitted by their antennas considered by the World Health Organization to be a Class 2B carcinogen. Smart meters typically overcharge and inaccurately represent usage when compared with reliable, accurate analog or electronic meters. Smart meters and the smart grid risk security and liability of the electrical supply by opening a new portal to hackers. I'd like to complete my letter by saying, for these reasons, but not necessarily limited to these, I require only the electromechanical meter without electronic internet components be used in connection with my account. I will happily self-read the meter, accurately track the usage billing, and happy to have a reader come onto my property. Sincerely, Lisa Oxman, owner residence at 345 East 34th Place, Eugene, Oregon, 97405. Again, thank you. You are amazing, and I do not hate you. I just want to sleep at night.
Next is Alan Romazano, followed by Mo.
Hi, I'm Alan Gormazano, and I live at 1907 Grant Street. I was away for almost 7 years, and while I was away, I got told by the people in my house about smart meters being put on. So I called into EWEB and said, do not put a smart meter on my house, please. I came back and get a letter in the mail saying, we're coming around soon. A hired company is coming around to put the smart meters on the house. I called in and said, I do not want a smart meter. Well, the wireless will be turned off on it. I do not want it anyway. Period. I also like my analog meter. I also believe in the no trespassing except to read my meter statements that were made out here. And one of the reasons I was given over the phone is that, well, the parts for the analog meters are not being made anymore. It'll be hard to repair. I said, so if you're interested in just saving money, then why don't you just wait until the meter falls apart or stops working and then replace it with something? Why hire a company and spend all this money to force things upon so many of us that we don't want? That's just going to cost more money and continue to raise electric rates, which I've seen them raise a lot since I've had bought my house in 1999. So anyway, I hope that we, the customers, can be respected and listened to and gone along with. When I voted for EWEB commissioners, I was looking on there, what's your stance on smart meters? I saw no statements to the effect. Didn't know who we were voting for. That would affect who we're voting for. So on that note, I want to thank you also for things like EWEB customer care, saved my neck a few times, including right now. Thank you. And all the work you did with restoring power. Thank you for all of that. And please, let's make happy customers here. I really would like to work together. And I will also make a big request because I don't have a running vehicle right now. And there's a lot of people in Eugene that don't. And it was a very long, cold bike ride to get out here tonight. And it will be a very long, cold bike ride to get back into town. So in order to invite more community input, please, maybe we can have these meetings someplace closer into town that more people can access. So, well, I guess that's it. I'll give up my 30 seconds to someone. Thank you so much.
Mo Lowhouse, followed by Sabrina Siegel.
Take it 30 seconds. My name is Mo Lowhouse. I live in West Eugene. And like many people here, I've been damaged by smart meters. I went through the minutes to realize how the current policy was made. And I saw there was a very careful process in 2013. And there was a very rushed process in 2018. But some of the people in the room were concerned about that. And one of them was Commissioner Helgeson. And when the policy was changed, he included an amendment. And that amendment was, in a manner consistent with the original principles of advanced metering. So any changes in 2018 had to be implemented in a manner consistent with the original principles of advanced metering. And I went and read those, and there are 11. I'll just share one with you. Increased customer choice. This was a principle that's supposed to guide our activity as a utility. Increased customer choice. Customers should be able to refuse the installation of a smart meter. Develop programs and services that give customer choice, not mandates, which is to require people to do things. Customers should be free to opt into programs that interest them, such as time of use rates, or to remain with standard EWEB rates. Customers who opt in should be allowed to opt back out. So just to hit a couple of these, consumers should be able to refuse the installation of a smart meter. Develop programs and services that give customers choice, not mandates. Customers who opt in should be allowed to opt back out. This was the board's decision that these principles would guide the new policy. These principles are not guiding the new policy. How do we as a community get you to respect your own decisions? What's the mechanism? You're not hearing that people have been hurt and then more people will be hurt. You made a decision that's legally binding. How do we get you to respect your own decisions? The changes would be made according to the principles in the initial decision. The changes are not being made in accordance with the principles stated in the initial decision. Policy is being illegitimately exercised. How do we get you to respect your decisions? I'm available. I've reached out to all 6 of you. I got a response from 1 of you. I don't know if your emails are still blocked from the so-called spam attack, but I'm interested in connecting with you. Thank you very much.
Next is Sabrina Siegel.
Hello, Sabrina Siegel. Thank you for all you do. Please hear us because our lives are in danger. Maybe you're not aware of it. You're not aware of the science, and you're not taking it seriously somehow. It's just not registering. But I'm going to read this, which letter, which part of this letter, which discusses why it's still unsafe, even if you turn off the radio frequency microwave emitting part of the meter. There's still a phenomenon of dirty electricity that gets on the wiring of our home, which is still a health danger. There are 2 kinds of there are 2 kinds of radiation. I want to preface this by saying I'm an electrosensitive and I'm really affected by all the Wi-Fi in this room, and it's really getting to me right now. And this is why I don't have a smart meter. I have no Wi-Fi in my home. I have no emitting cell phone. I became electrosensitive from having an electric car. I believed in all the, environmental, stuff about the climate, and it's just not made for human beings. Electric cars, all this wireless, remote, radiation and sending of information. It's not biologically sound. It works for machines, great, but not even better than wires, but it works for machines, but it doesn't work for human beings. And I'm a living, suffering testament to that, it just is harming us. So there are 2 kinds of radiation emitted by the smart meters, radio frequency radiation, which is RFR, and electromagnetic frequency radiation, or EMR. The meters emit RFR when they are transmitting data about user consumption. They emit EMR due to the switching mode power supply, the SMPS, in the meter that steps down electricity from AC to DC. This is required to operate the meter, but not to deliver power to the residents or business. This power supply emits high-powered spikes throughout the wiring of the building 24/7. It affects building users whether or not data is being transmitted to the utility. Your policy of allowing customers to opt out of transmitting data only addresses one of the two problems. Thank you. Big help, danger, big problem.
Thank you. And last is Joshua Korn.
I'm here to announce this letter of liability. My name's Joshua Korn, 3212 Van Buren Street, Eugene 97405. To all EWEB commissioners, including John Brown, Sonia Carlson, Mindy Schlossberg, Don Borofsky, and Matt McRae, and General Manager Frank Lawson. Here above stated, this notice of non-consent to installation of any wireless smart metering device. Joshua Korn hereby prohibits any electronic or wireless metering device hereafter referred to as a smart meter from being installed in or at my residence of 3212 Van Buren Street, Eugene, Oregon 97405. This statement acts as formal notice, and any liability for damage or harm resulting from these conditions being violated rests with recipients of this statement, you, the board, and all members. The meter manufacturers and any subcontractors involved in smart meter production, installation, and operation. Homeowners have the ultimate authority to decide what technology is installed in or on their homes, not utilities whose government protected monopoly prevents residents from choosing a competing utility provider. Smart meters are surveillance devices and violate our Fourth Amendment right to privacy in our homes, guaranteed under the United States Constitution. All portions of the political spectrum agree it is about individual freedom of choice and resident owners' basic property rights. Smart meters have been called into question as a fire hazard, and such devices have been responsible for fires, explosions, and other serious safety problems. Smart meters have caused documented health problems. The bursts of RF radiation emitted by their antennas, considered by the World Health Organization to be a Class 2B carcinogen. Smart meters typically overcharge and inaccurately represent usage when compared with reliable, accurate analog meters, which I already have installed on my home. Smart meters and the smart grid risk security and reliability of the electricity supply by opening a new portal to hackers and others who wish to disrupt these services. This is a major cybersecurity problem created by smart meters. For these reasons, but not necessarily limited to these reasons, I require only analog electromechanical meters without electronic internet components to be used in connection with my account. I will happily self-read the analog meters and accurately track the usage billing for energy consumption on my property, making available the meter for reading confirmations with reasonable notice. Sincerely, Joshua Korn. And incidentally, in the UK, I have heard that some utilities are allowing emailed photographs of the meter to help with billing accuracy.
Thank you. Thanks, Joshua. That ends the public input period for this meeting. And at this time, commissioners are given an opportunity to comment if they choose, and we'll start with.
Yeah, thank everybody for coming out. I was here during all the periods of 2013 and 2018, so I've been through it. I do have a couple questions for the general manager. Could you have the Salmon Watch program was my favorite. I know it was very popular with all the kids and I thought it was very worthwhile. And I'm not gonna get into dialogue with Donna, but I just want to know if it went away, why did it go away? Because that was the one program that I got so much positive feedback from students, from chaperones, from everybody about how the kids got to raise a little salmon fly and just turn them loose and learn the whole cycle. And so if that's gone away, I'd like to know why. And then just a question on analog. Who owns those meters?
Could you speak up just a little bit? It's hard to hear.
Okay, I'm doing the best I can. I'm hard to hear too. I've got hearing aids, so I'll do the best I can. We're working on the acoustics of this room, so I apologize. Could you tell us who owns those meters?
Sure. So the meter is an asset of the utility. The utility owns, operates, and maintains the meter as one of the assets that is owned by the organization. Unlike, and it has been, there is legal precedent for this, that the owner of the resident does not get to choose which metering device that they get to select for their house. That is made by the utility. And that's been supported in legal cases throughout the country. And so through our customer service policies, having a metering device is a condition of service. But that device is owned and operated and maintained by the utility.
Okay, and question about smart meters. So a digital meter and a smart meter are almost synonymous. It's a digital meter until you turn it on and then it becomes a smart meter. Is that correct?
There's really three, I would say, classes of meters. The analog meter, which is electromechanical in nature. There were digital meters. Digital meters started to be deployed pretty significantly across the country in the 1990s. Those are basically using digital technology to provide a digital display. Smart meters are an evolution of that. They have the ability to communicate. When they're not communicating, in essence, they're operating like a digital meter.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess I'll just real quick. I was here when we voted to make this change in 2018, and I just wanted to know some of the things that I cared about and still care about. The safety of staff is one of the reasons that I personally voted to change to having smart meters, because there are people out there that are not okay and to threaten our meter readers. There are people that threaten them with all kinds of things when they're out and about, and it's not safe for them in the general public. And one of our first and foremost reasons is around safety. So safety of our staff is a part of that. That is one of the reasons that I voted to support it. I also voted to support it because we don't have access to the meters anymore, and the analog meters are not accurate. They're old, and we are finding that when they're replaced, they're not accurate. And another one of the reasons, and I've been very, very diligently listening to all of you, and I very much appreciate what you're saying, and I don't doubt that you have issues with it. My challenge is that we are in a society where we have to work with the things that we have, and the cell phones themselves that are out there, of which I am sure there are many, many in this room. And for those of you who have challenges with that, I'm very sorry, because if you're out in public, there are so many cell phones, and the amount that that cell phones give off is like 12,000 times the smart meter. And I've done much research on this throughout the time here. And this is part of the reason why the smart meter is such a small piece, but the amount of benefit that it can give to our customers, I did feel overweighted. And that's why I've done this. This is why I voted for it. And any of you, feel free to reach out, email me. I know you have, many of you, and I've listened to it. But I just want you to know that that's why I did. And I appreciate that you are coming out and talking to us. Those are some of the reasons. Thank you.
I didn't catch your name. I'm sorry.
Sonia Carlson.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Either of you? Yeah, manager?
No, I would just point out, there was a number of people who commented about the history of this. The history of this predates probably all of us, including Commissioner Brown, this has been part of a public process for 26 years at the organization. Through that time, we've developed policy. It's management's intent to fulfill the policy as it is today, as it has evolved to get to today, and that includes the complete deployment of AMI technology, with preserving the option to opt out, which is the non-communicating mode. And by the way, not just in town, but also up the McKenzie Valley is our eventual plan as well. So that's the course that we're taking, and that's the approach that we're taking. And this is partially because of this board, but also previous boards who provided direction and supported the development and approval of policy along those lines.
We feel confident that we have everybody who's testified tonight, their information in the system accurately so that the meters are turned off so they are not emitting.
What did she say?
We will eventually, if they, or when they get a smart meter, that they will have opted out.
Thank you. All right, so that ends this portion. We're going to move on to the ice storm recovery and update report. Manager.
Examine is not just a management, because that's very different, so.
So President McCray, thank you for the audio record. I guess my time. Just wanted to make a few comments about the ice storm recovery. Also, there's all of the members of the executive team who are here that can answer questions on this topic as well. This is not a report out on what I would call the good, the bad, and the ugly. This does not include our after action reporting or the hot washes, we call it, for things that internally we would say this went well or this did not go well. This is really a recap of the situation that we were presented with and the response and the result of how we responded to that. A little bit of comparison over the last, what would be considered sort of three major storms. 2016, there was an ice storm that was fairly localized, affected EWEB significantly, did not affect some of the utilities around us. This last ice storm, which was two ice storms, not only affected EWEB significantly, but also EPUD, as we know, Springfield Utility Board, Lane Electric. And just to give you, now I will say these are preliminary on the right assessments, but significant number of restorations over and impacts over the couple of weeks that we worked on and responded to this event. 38,000 services restored is significantly larger than what was referred to as Snowmageddon in 2019 and also the ice storm in 2016. The injuries, well, not listed there, were probably, I think, about 11 in total. Those were, and one was a recordable injury, excuse me. Those were primarily early on in the response as really slips and falls. Those first few days were pretty treacherous, as you can imagine. I did want to point out, again, you can kind of look at this, 250 or more internal staff members responding, and pretty significant when you look at just the fact that we replaced 92,000 feet of electric wire and rebuilt about a third of our system, it seems like, over those 2 weeks. There were also really some other significant impacts. We think about the electric side, but we have to point out that this event affected generation significantly and also our water department. Hayden Bridge and really the foresight of this board to approve the investment in resiliency at the Hayden Bridge water treatment plant prevented some of the issues that might have come up if we would have also, in the middle of an ice storm, restricted water use. And so we had pump stations that we had backup generation. We lost fiber communications, which is an important part of our protection systems. And probably the largest impact on transmission that we've seen. Now, I wasn't born in the Columbus Day storm, so I can't really go back that far, but probably the heaviest damage that we've seen on the that transmission side. But really wanted to acknowledge that generation and drinking water were also part of the generation dealing without power outages. The main transmission line from Carmen Smith was impacted at a time when power prices were significantly stressed throughout the Northwest, not just because this affected EWEB, but also because of the impact. During some of those peak times, that's about $40,000 an hour of lost generation capability in the region. So that's pretty significant. Also wanted to acknowledge the fact that there were a number of different incident commanders. I did want to acknowledge them. Tyler Nice, in particular, Bo Mackey, Karen was an incident commander, and Scott Milovich was also an incident commander. This was the first time we implemented a full ICS across the entire organization simultaneously. We did not have separate ICSs. We had a full ICS. There was a lot of logistics support for the crews. People see the crews, they tend to be the one out in the world, but a lot of logistics takes place during that time. A lot of planning and design takes place. Those of you who have been involved in seeing some of the behind the scenes work understand that. And so it really, safety is very involved. So it's really an organizational wide effort. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Go ahead with the next slide, Holly. This was basically how the restoration, the anatomy of every storm is slightly different. And so you can see that there's some pretty steady work along the way, but really pretty amazing that within the first few days, really, we as an organization restored a significant number of services within a very short amount of time. Those last 1,000 or so were extremely difficult locations. Some of those locations not accessible. And so having to cut our way down Deerhorn Road and some of those things was pretty treacherous. And there were just aspects of this that we could not get to. Next slide, please. The communications, there were really 3 or 4 different forms of communications. One was just direct speaking with people. Handled 25,000 calls during this time. And one of the things I'd like to point out is that while we did have one routing issue kind of in the middle that we had to respond to, for the most part, we were responding and picking up phones, which was significantly heavier than normal within our standard time. And in this case, most of the time in less than a minute. And so really wanted to compliment the customer service staff for being flexible, being able to operate in different locations. I did a survey. This was an informal survey, so it's I did it with the crews and a number of other people. While we were in the process of restoring people, about 3/4 of our employees at one point or another went home at the end of the day to a house that had no electricity. And so it was pretty significant. It was a significant impact on staff as well as the community. And I don't think anybody appreciates the sense of urgency that we have more than ourselves. So direct communications through the phone. Also, go ahead with the next slide. A few others, news media, traditional media, a number of different active reports going on. Then we also, social media is always an interesting one because you get a lot of piling on of either the good, the bad, and the ugly, however you want to look at this. For the most part, social media was supportive and positive and understanding of the difficulty of the situation that the community was facing. And also the difficulty of trying to answer the question very specifically, which is, when is my power coming back on? We're rebuilding a very complex puzzle until we get to a point where we're very close to, working on your street or your service. It's a really difficult thing to answer. And so we have to answer in generalities at a time when people want a specific. And I know that commissioners feel that as well, because you're called with the same information that we have. I will say we were communicating really well with what we had available to us, the information we had available. And you can see just the number of posts and things. And then website, 432,000 views is pretty incredible for this incredible size of community in that amount of time. And so really took a multimedia approach to this. I think overall, feel pretty good about the organization, feel very good about how the organization responded. Rod can maybe weigh in a little bit more. He's been involved in storm response a little longer than I have. I've been involved in multiple storm responses since 2010. I really found the organization to have a good combination of a sense of urgency and importance without a sense of panic. Felt like there was really good teamwork, focusing on the right things, making sure that we were doing what we could. And so wanted to compliment those involved in the recovery and the restoration and thank them for that. I did want to see if Rod and specifically Karen had anything they wanted to do. The other thing I will note is the rough estimate for the cost is about $8 million for the response or so. Again, Deborah over my shoulder is probably a little more in tune with this. And we will potentially get 3/4 of that back through FEMA if all those processes go correctly. Rod, did you want to add anything? And then maybe Karen?
I'll just say real quick, I totally agree. This is probably one of the smoothest restorations that I've of this magnitude that I've been around. And the other thing, is a very regional event too, all the way up to Portland. So we had lots of, I can't believe we got the materials we did in the time we did. So, I mean, just everybody, hats off to customer service, purchasing, warehouse. So many things that went right during this, or wrong, depending how you look at it, but so many things that went very smoothly, the spirit of cooperation, the ICS, we continue to practice. We do these things in the off time. And I think that's really the testament, is not how you behave as in the storm, but in these off times, we're spending a lot of time and effort practicing and getting ready for these kind of things. So, and we stand up our ICS, seems almost too often now, but yeah. Karen?
Yeah, I'd just say a couple of things that stand out as support from the community and how important that was, I think, to our crews who are working 4 days for 14 days in a row. Having that was really critical, and the visits that commissioners made did make an impact on the crews as well. So I wanted to say thank you for taking time for that. We did have the line tech department run their hot wash this morning. So, we did have a lot of things go really well, and we've learned a lot of lessons from years past. But we do have a long way to go as well, things that we can fix for the future. And a lot of that does include preparation. And then just personally, I want to thank the board and boards past for some of the decisions you've made on behalf of the utility that have led to us sustaining fewer problems in these events. So I had the opportunity to speak to the media yesterday about Hayden Bridge and how they survived the storm with the backup generators. And similar to when we had the chlorine shortage, it was critical that these kinds of decisions that are so forward thinking and proactive to consider, what maybe you may think it's a low risk, and then it happens. And it's like buying insurance for us, is kind of how I described it.
And it's paid major dividends. So I just want to thank you all for your attention to these kinds of things and your support for all of us. And then just another thanks to all the crews and all of the other support staff who were involved. I hadn't been through a storm like this myself. The way I describe it was, I was in awe at how many people were working together without killing each other and getting the job done and doing it so well and with positive attitudes, which was really stood out to me too. People were not stressed. They like this kind of thing. And I described it as oddly fun because it's a time to really come together, and that was incredible to see. So lots of positive things, but lots of work to do.
I don't know that all of us like it. Say that, but
it was oddly fun is how I said it.
And just to sum it up, I really think that these kinds of events both reveal character and build character. And I think they revealed a lot about the organization and the teamwork and the professionalism of the organization. Also, I think it builds our character to know that we do have the capabilities to do this, but also improve every time. We don't get a chance, and very fortunately, to test this very often. And so really proud of the organization. Still, we're going to go through our hot wash process and have a list of things that we want to do and improve on. And then finally, just thanks for the bucket truck, as one of our crewmates would have wanted us to pass along. So back to you, Mr. President.
Great, thanks. Sonia?
Well, again, big thank you to the team here. They did such a wonderful job. And I think that even speaks to, the people who came and testified. I remember in 2016 and 2019, we had people that were angrier at the response. So I know that we've come a long way, in spite of the fact that it was a much stronger storm that we got hit with twice back to back. So just huge hats off there. I did get to do a ride along. John and I went through and we saw some of the damage around Hayden Bridge and how it's just, line after line after line, even though you do think that you have all of these different backups, it's the same, the same storm hitting that same area. So I'm really glad that that was able to connect. And I was very impressed with each of the crews that we met with. Well, we kept kind of missing them in action. It was like, I think they were just moving along so quickly. It was like, oh, and they're done. Oh, and they're done too, which was great. But for the people that we saw, they were smiling and cheerful, which to me was incredible given that these guys, they are out there for 16 hours a day in cold, bitter, chilling conditions. So again, big hats off to them. I am curious, the 38,000 number, that's customer lines, right? That's, out of our, 90,000, we had 38,000.
There were 38,000 restorations of different services. I can't say that those were all unique 38,000. There might have been some that got hit by the first storm. We recovered them, we restored them, and then on that Tuesday night, they may have gone down again, but that is services. If you look at the average number of people impacted per service, it's probably 120,000 people were directly impacted one way or the just approximately.
And then I did want to note that, so on our outage and ACD regular call queue, it says that the outage was out on the 20th and the 21st. Is that right? Am I reading that? This slide correctly? But we thought that it was only out these 2 days, the 20th and 21st, when our call lines were.
And the gray bars on each of the days are the outage calls that they took, and then the blue bars are the regular customer service calls that they took. So there's outage calls every day from the 13th to the 26th.
Okay, and so when did we have the issue with the company that we?
It was the day that you and John Brown tried to call in and got routed to a voicemail message. I remember exactly which day that was.
Well, I was asking because, I called on the 18th and it was 2 days before I called back. So that just leaves me, I think, why can't we have an online form? I know there was an email about it, but I just hear it again. Can't we have just an online form? Because if I have a cell phone and I call and I can't leave all of the information. And then my power's out for long enough time that my phone is now dead. Now I can't get you the information, nor can I receive a phone call.
So just in the present outage management system, there just is not the sort of mechanism to get that input into the system. It's just the system would not allow it. There's no import capability to it. We will, in fact, within the next year or so, have a new outage management system that we're going to be implementing. There may be ways for customers to provide some situational awareness. This is something that we're going to talk about in our hot washes. I personally believe that the communications of what we were communicating and what we had was great. I do think that we can look at improving our situational awareness. Further leveraging our smart meters is an example of that, and directly feeding an outage map is a potential option to do that. Customers' ability to do that would have to have some very specific method. So pole number, corner, there might be ways to incorporate that, but we haven't really, in talking with other utilities, found that just, sort of freeform ability to be very beneficial.
I mean, what kind of questions do the person who's intaking information manually and typing it into a computer ask? Name, address, where's your outage, what's your address? I mean, that all can be a fillable form that people could literally type it online, and even if it doesn't automatically type it, they could copy and paste it over. It feels like to me, they could upload photos.
So the photo part is that further information is another step. The next outage management system, you won't even have to call. We will know. We'll know what's out of power and where. And so any further acknowledgements, the line is down, or there's a tree in the line, that would be a second step of which we will evaluate what the options are.
Thank you.
So Sonia, to speak to your point, during the outage, we had our Comcast, our Xfinity line down, and you can't really call them. You get caught in some loop, so you can only submit it online. And it was super frustrating because you don't know where it goes. At some point, we got a message saying that our case was resolved, but like our line was still down. So I hear what you're saying about that, but also not perfect. The online system.
I think that from our perspective, and this is important feedback for us from both commissioners, we do want to understand how we can improve our situational awareness. And there may be a number of different options that we look at there. I don't know that we want to use Comcast as our basis for comparison. I probably shouldn't say that. My cable will be cut off later tonight. But I do think there's ways of which we can, I don't want to call it crowdsourcing information, but there's the potential that we could supplement what we're planning to do going forward, which is to automate more of this. And Rod and I've had a number of discussions about where there's the potential to automate and tie things together in a more efficient way. So that's one of the things that we'll be reviewing over the next few weeks.
So I did receive quite a few unhappy emails from people, particularly people who live upriver, and mostly were towards the end of the storm when power was being restored in many other places, and they just felt like they didn't know when their power was going to be on. And I know that EWEB put out messages. I saw them that said, it will take up to a week or something like that. But I'm just wondering, in the future, I don't know what the answer is, but maybe think about how we communicate with people who live in more rural areas. I don't know, eventually if we can, if they have cell phone coverage, but, send out like one of those emergency alerts or something that give them some information or something like that, just because, like you said, the thing that I think makes people the most upset, the most nervous is just not knowing. And not everybody is making on Facebook or on all of our major channels. So that was just one thing that I heard. And then the other thing was an email that I sent out to ICS and all the commissioners, but it was a local grocery store that had a question about their power. And they kept trying to call to talk to a customer service person just to get some information that they could then relate to their electrician to make some decisions, and they weren't ever able to get to a person. So I'm just wondering also in the future about, I don't know, key businesses or businesses that provide a somewhat essential service, if there is like a point of contact for them where they talk to a person.
Several things. That very last slide, we show all the crew and everybody and amassed around there. I just want to point out that there is there's a sign on the wall that says, "Let it snow." Really? I mean, think about it. It was left over from the holidays. $8 million. Is that what you said? Power went from $100 a megawatt to $1,700 a megawatt to buy. Does that $8 million include our cost to purchase power?
No, those are just direct costs.
Those are direct costs. So we don't get recovery of that.
No, not from.
Price increase because it was.
I'm assuming the person over my shoulder is agreeing with me because no, those are not directly reimbursable.
But the lost revenue, the $40,000 an hour that we lost from Carmen, we don't get that either.
No.
Okay, then the company that failed us, that where we called in and we never got called back. I got a robocall a day later. We paid money for them for a service or a system and it failed. Do we have any recourse against them?
I don't know. We'll follow up. I don't know whether a specific contract is with them. I thought it was really responsible of us, and I think about past storms that we actually did robocall you back. In some cases, we direct called people back as opposed to just leaving you out in the cold. So to say, I know you were in the cold a little bit. I think all of us were. Because we did have a situation in 2016 where there were 5,000 calls that went into an email or a voicemail location that was actually not discovered until much later. But we'll follow up and check that contract.
And I'd like to comment on the outage map. It seems like it's challenging to use when you get a mass of outages. I mean, I looked at it today because there's an outage in my neighborhood, and it still has 34 customers being restored. It has still storm information on there, and I find that map challenging to use because I can go all the way to Seattle with it. I don't know why it has that scale on it. When you margin things. And lastly, on this last, I've been through 3 of these in a few years. And I noticed, and I got pictures of it again this time, that the PUC is not making the communication people trim. So all the little lines that are on all our poles are there, and the trees are on them, and the trees get full of snow and ice, and they bring the whole system down, and we have to pay for it. How come we're still letting that happen? Why aren't we going after the PUC and Comcast and Quest and all those people that are making our ratepayers have to pay money to restore the facilities because they don't trim the lines?
You and I share that concern, Commissioner. I do know that there's some things going on legislatively to either help or hinder that. There's actually been some reversals of that the other direction that puts more burden on the utility. But that is something that, and I'll let Rod comment here in a minute. I feel like there's, well, I don't necessarily believe that the utility should be responsible for their trimming. I do think that if there's costs that we can capture, those would be fair to recoup through our joint use rates. The joint use rates are a pretty specific formula that's been developed through a state process. So there's some challenges there, but I'll yield to Rod if he knows anything more at this point. I drove around, by the way, my neighborhood, and it was exactly the same way. There were trees that EWEB had trimmed. We are, legally obligated to do that. It's a safety-driven process. And then below it, there's communications lines that trees are just laying all over and the poles are sort of stretching and look very awkward. So we understand the situation. I don't know where we're at with a solution.
Well, where the legislature is. So PUC recognizes this, and so their first solution was to get the electric utilities to be responsible for the whole thing and then backfill the comms. So actually, we all pushed back on that. So, and this is really starting from wildfire mitigation too. So recognition that comms have more to play, but they have shortened cycles down to finding and billing some of the comms. The comms are in some cases are starting to turn around their tree trimming but it's still an open problem.
Now you can just drive out 34th and Willamette, or, you know, in that section, you'll see trees that have been there for 30 years and they're just dragging all that system down. It's going to bring down feeder lines and neighborhoods and everything else. And we get the bill for it. I did, you know, I brought this up before and we can do something about it. We learned about it.
Rod, do you know if that's a PUC docket or is that a legislative solution?
The legislative piece comes from the wildfire, but then the PUC, it's a PUC.
No argument at all from management or the commissioner. We need to find the mechanism to be able to try to do that. The flip side of being more, you know, taking on more responsibility from a tree trimming perspective just makes us that much more popular with some of our customers in the community when we start more aggressively trimming trees. There's a social toll there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. A lot of things have already been touched on by other commissioners. One thing that I would like to bring up and maybe ask if it could be done was, you know, we've talked about all of our crews and how hard these guys up in the yellow vest worked through this. There were also a lot of contract people that worked with us, our tree trimming crews. You know, I watched a guy climbing up in a bucket truck going in between lines to cut down a tree. Also our mutual aid responders. Would it be appropriate for the board to be able to send a letter of thanks to some of those contractors and other utilities that sent crews in? That would be something that I would be interested in doing, especially the tree service. I know that in the past we had some issues with one of the tree services that we contracted with. Not so much about them doing their work, but just the way that they did it. And the professionalism that I saw, the tree crews that were out there, was incredible. And so if it is appropriate, I think something coming from the board, some of those outside agencies would definitely be appropriate.
I think they would very much appreciate it. And we'll facilitate it. Sorry, President McCray, I do want to comment about the outage map. The outage map, the technology of the outage map is not the issue. It's how we've been feeding information in and out of it. Again, there's part of this is the situational awareness piece and aspects of this that we need to improve. It's pretty effective I have to compliment our IS and GIS teams who made some adjustments in midstream because it had some misleading information on there about the number of crews assigned to things and such. Again, that's an artifact of how our processes interact with it. But those are some areas that we want to improve because I think it works really well for a one or two small outage where you can go in and see where the status is. When you get a larger outage where more pieces of the puzzle have fallen on the floor and you're trying to rebuild that, it becomes a tool that's less effective. So we're going to take a look at that.
I just have a few comments. I was really grateful that our water treatment operations continued without interruption. I know one of our neighbor utilities did not have that happen, and I was just grateful to have clean water coming to my house that I didn't have to worry about. So super grateful for the investments that we've made collectively there. The staff communication to the board, the emails we were getting was super helpful. The responsiveness of the liaison between the board and the crews working was super helpful. I was able to get questions answered very quickly, so thank you. You mentioned this, Frank, that there's been an emergency declaration, and I know the county is pursuing federal funding to help reimburse. And I'm very optimistic that we'll get a significant reimbursement, which will help remove some of the sting of that $8 million bill. I found the outage map to be really helpful. And I know a lot of people were using it, and felt like between that and the communications outward to the public, that we did a really good job. I agree that the field crew just did remarkable work in a really difficult situation, and appreciate their effort. I will say the self-reporting outage map that would be made available by smart meters sounds amazing. I look forward to having that come online. A couple of questions. One about backup power for medical devices. I know that we've started to do some work to support people who have medical devices that require electricity, especially as we look at public safety shutoffs for wildfire. We've kind of leaned in on that front. Does that extend into all of EWEB's territory, or is it just in areas that are prone to wildfire?
I believe that's started only in areas for wildfire. I think when we get into looking at our new CIS system and classifying customers, there may be ways that we can flag that. Also, to Commissioner Schlossberg's point, we don't differentiate solely at this point based on the kind, whether you're a grocery store or a restaurant. You know, we do have a list of our top 50 customers as far as emergency response priorities, and that would be wastewater treatment plants, pump stations, emergency services, hospitals. Those tend to be in the category of that, but there's not another tier that we have necessarily below that. And so our new customer system hopefully will have the capability to identify a little bit more around that. I'm also surprised that something is like a grocery store does not have emergency backup generation for certain things that are refrigerated or other things, just because of the availability that you can now have during a time of need. So we do have a backup generator program that we might look and see if we can help facilitate more of that for resiliency purposes. So that's a residential program. We might look to expand that to commercial if necessary.
Yeah, and I'm mostly thinking about residential, you know, people who are medically fragile. Right. And I would be supportive of us taking that program that is helping people in a one area, expanding it to all of our territory, given a storm like this that had several people without power for a week. I mean, it's really hopefully unusual circumstance, but we've also seen these big storms stack up with every few years now, and it feels like backup batteries that can help people get through this without medical challenge could be super helpful, and I think it'd be a good use of our funds to help that happen. I also think the same with the water storage. I know in the past we've done a lot of work to help people buy water storage containers. And, you know, again, we were really fortunate that we didn't have any issues with our water, but I think just to hedge against that possibility that additional investment in water containers and helping people get prepared would be valuable. I would support that. And then the last question is around mutual aid crews. I was really happy to see the amount of support that we would get from other utilities nearby. Did we do any? Right, you have something?
Yeah, I was going to make a slight nuance to that. This was a lot more of a local, I'll say broad impact. It wasn't just EWEB. All of the other local utilities all the way up through Portland were impacted. Most of the crews that you saw beyond EWEB crews were not mutual aid crews. They were contracted crews. And so there's a little bit of a nuance there. partly because all of the normal potential that we have for local mutual aid was taken up and then some. So it was a little bit of a different category.
Did we have any supporting crews contracted or mutual aid crews pre-positioned given the forecast, or is that something that we've done in the past?
Yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, we actually went into ICS 2 days before the storm. We made a number, I'll call them reservations, to different organizations. I want to say at one point, I recall our incident commander saying that we had reached out to 30 different contract crews, multiple person crews. Some of these events, and depending on the timing and the anatomy of the event, it's not just more crews, more better, depending on where that is. And so, yeah, we had also started to pre-plan the purchase of materials and support logistics at that point. I think that was on the 11th, if I recall, when the storm really kind of started on the 13th. And so we had done some pre-planning work for that.
Thanks.
The one other point I wanted to make was really felt a lot of cooperation with the city of Eugene and Lake County through our liaison officer. A lot of communications there, as well as other utilities who were communicating with us as well. And so for example, utilized EWEB's water trailers, water distribution trailers during their response. And so this was back and forth on a number of different fronts, but definitely wanted to acknowledge some good collaboration with the city of Eugene and Lake County specifically. Sorry, one more thing. We walk away from this recognizing a few things. You know, electricity used to be called a modern convenience. It's no longer that. It's a modern necessity. I think we recognize that. If you look at this event, probably the one word that I would categorize this with walking away from it on the other side of it is opportunity. There's an opportunity to look at this from an individual preparedness perspective, from a community preparedness perspective, and also how are we going to position ourselves to be more resilient? We know that's an important thing for the board and for staff from a design perspective, from a asset, from a people perspective, from a financial perspective. So all of those things really, as much as these are challenges, there's opportunity here. And I think that's how we approach it. And we're going to see what we can learn. And a little bit more of a complete report will come back to the board either in March or April, depending on how polished we want to deliver it to the board. But either March or April, the board will get the after action report.
Just one more quick thing, maybe Rod can answer this. When I looked up there and I saw 80 transformers, that must have pretty much dug into our backup supplies. Is that going to have a negative impact on some of the plans that we had going forward to do replacements and stuff like that? I know that transformers has been something that we've had an issue in the past. Do you see that the ripple effect of this being pushing off some of the needed category 2 and 3 things that we have planned coming forward?
Not that I've heard of. We, in fact, kind of stocked up a little bit, and then the suppliers really went to work for us and all the people in this area by bringing in. They called all around other utilities in the whole West and brought in transformers. So I'm not expecting too much impact. No.
A transformer business.
Yeah. Or you could be a lineman too, and I bet you can make it.
I couldn't climb that pole. I couldn't do it.
All right, thanks. Moving on to board action items, consent calendar A.
I move to approve consent calendar A.
Moved by Borowski, seconded by Brown. Any discussion? Further discussion. Support say aye. Aye. Unanimously. Consent calendar B.
Move to adopt consent calendar B.
By Brown,
I'll second.
second by Borowski. Any discussion? Discussion. All right, all in support of consent calendar B, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passed unanimously. That was quick. Resolution number 20482. The upcoming electric utility bond. All right. Well, here comes the crew.
If you need money, go to them.
I feel like Deborah should get a foul flag. She can just throw over your shoulder if you say something wrong. It would be entertaining for them.
I think she'd prefer like a shot call.
Yeah, I think we all actually, that would be way more fun.
That's awkward. I can't admit that. Here. Good evening, President McCray and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Deborah Hart. I'm here this evening with Aaron Balmer, their acting in charge finance manager, and we're here to talk about issuing electric bonds in 2024. We have a brief presentation and then can answer any questions before we ask for your approval to go to City Council. Thank you. So EWEB's approach to financing capital investments uses a combination of our current rate revenue, reserves, contribution and aid, grants, and debt financing. Consistent with the 2024 budget and long-term financial plan that we were just here with in the fall, we are seeking to issue 64 million in bonds to fund an electric capital projects over the next couple of years. Proceeds from this issuance are slated to finance further investments in Carmen Smith, as well as substation resiliency and reliability projects that you've seen in the electric capital improvement plan. We last issued debt to finance capital investments in 2020, and that process netted 46 million in proceeds. And that has funded investments in Carmen, current substation, AMI, and the downtown network. So with that, I'm gonna pass over to Aaron to talk about the market.
Thank you, Deborah. Good evening, Commissioners. So when evaluating the bond issuance process, management considers whether it would be beneficial to refinance current outstanding debt. This slide shows a long-term overview of the 30-year Treasury and municipal market rates. The takeaway here is that interest rates have declined in recent months and are forecast to moderate further through 2024. So these current market conditions present an opportunity for the electric utility to refund bonds originally issued in 2012 and achieve debt service savings of approximately $270,000. 2012 bonds are callable, which provides an opportunity to efficiently refinance while issuing new money bonds for capital projects. The green line on this graph shows the existing Series 2012 debt service, and the bars show potential debt service after refunding. Periods with the most notable potential savings are 2029 through 2032 and 2039. Depending on markets, we would be seeking to refund all or a portion of the remaining principal amounts, and we'd be looking to optimize the present value savings. In terms of the issuance process, this slide highlights the board's touch points along the way. Tonight, we are bringing for the board's consideration a resolution requesting City Council authorization for the issuance and sale of electric utility revenue and refunding bonds. As the board is chartered by the City Council authorization is needed, and we are slated on the City Council meeting agenda for February 12th. Following city council authorization, a public notification process applies to the new construction funds and is an opportunity for voters to petition to have the issuance on a ballot. There's no public notification needed for the refinancing piece. As part of the due diligence process in all of this, the board has provided a copy of what we call the preliminary official statement for review. And then prior to bond pricing and sale, management would bring back a supplemental resolution to the board requesting authorization for staff to proceed with the bond agreements. So, management is seeking new money for capital investments and refinancing to improve existing debt service obligations. And recommends approval of resolution 2402, bond issuance process with the city. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, President McRae, for questions, comments, the discussion.
Thank you. Yeah.
The 47 million, Armin, is that? Last time I heard we were 190 million and running. And is this another 47 million on top of the 190 we've already spent?
The 47 million, I believe you're referencing, was the issuance we had from 20.
So that's a prior issuance. So we're just refinancing the 47 million that's in the 190.
I'm getting lost in the numbers. The 47 million, I believe you're referencing, is our issuance for 2020. We did use the proceeds.
So that's in when we got the number that we've Armin's cost us like 190 license. That 47 is in that.
Number for Carmen is much larger than.
That's not an additional amount.
Correct. Yeah, the amount that we're looking at least with this year for Carmen, is under 24 million, I believe that's in the capital plan.
Yeah.
And that would be funded by the proceeds from this issuance.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna go for 47 million. Part of that's to refinance what we issued in 2020, and the balance of 20 million is gonna go to an additional cost plan.
So we're looking to issue 64 million. This time our last issuance in 2020 was 47 million. Within, we have an opportunity. There's a small amount of outstanding bonds from 2012. And since we'll be in the market, we're looking to realize some savings from refinancing those bonds. We didn't refinance them the last time because it didn't make financial sense.
Okay, so it says 47 million, but it's really 60. I'm just looking on page 2 of the, and it says that 47 million in type 3 projects for the Carmen Smith license deployment. But you're going to go out for 60 million. I'm trying to keep track of what Carmen's costing us. And so we're at 10 conforming now. If 47 is to refinance existing debt, and then another 20 million for new expenses. So correct, and then help me, Frank.
No, the total that you'd heard before from Carmen Smith as a total cost. This is simply the method of financing that cost. This is not in addition. This is not adding to the scope or the cost of the total forecast for Carmen. This is a way of financing that. So it's not additional.
And it's not has anything to do with the fish issue.
No.
Okay. All right. So I think I got it now. Thank you.
And I just caught up to your $47 million figure in the background, and that is, that would be planned costs over the next 3 years for Carmen. Okay.
So the $64 million issue, how much of that is going to the refinance or to retire the old bonds?
The 64 million would be new money. In terms of the refinancing component, we have just over 15 million in outstanding principal remaining on the 2012s, and so it would be something 15 million or less sort of thing, depending again on how we can optimize present value savings.
So we're going to the city, we're asking for the ability to bond $64 million. We're going to use some of that $64 million to retire the old. We're going to go on top of that So we're actually at, do we have to ask the city for 80 numbers? 80 million?
We're asking the city to authorize the refinance of up to 15 million, depending on market conditions. And 64 in new money.
And then I know we won't know this number until we actually issue the bonds. But how much of the 64 million is going to get chewed up in interest and issuance cost? I mean, how much hard cash do we get out of a $64 million bond?
So that's roughly the amount that we expect to receive in proceeds. When we borrow 64 million, there may be a premium on those bonds that provides a little additional cash. I can get back.
But I mean, we have
our
to pay interest on that, right?
We would pay interest on top of that.
On top of that.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess that's what I'm cost. What is our cost for that $64 million? In interest and fees.
In terms of the underwriter's fees and what have you of that initial sale process, I don't have the number offhand, but it's very, very minor in terms of the entire.
Interest isn't very minor.
Interest is not.
And this is, how long are we going out? 30 years?
30 years.
So 30 years at 6%.
Under 5%.
Then the last thing, this is just procedural. And it kind of goes to one of our other items coming down here as far as what we can do as far as board members in representing board in front of other bodies. I think it's appropriate that we make an appearance at the city council to say thank you. Ask them, they're the ones that has to give us the A-OK. So I know that staff sometimes has done that. Would that be appropriate for a board member to go to the public testimony on Monday night and say thank you?
Haven't asked.
Yeah.
So currently we are slated as a consent item.
Right.
And staff will be available remotely. I did just want to share that. And there have been times when I think we've done a presentation, but they've not asked for that this time.
So I guess I'm asking head nods from the board if I were at that public forum on next Monday and just expressed our gratitude, would there be any problem with that?
I would support it wholeheartedly. You're going to be there in that line anyhow. Thank you very much for volunteering.
Just kind of goes to the, like, Dad, can I borrow $64 million? Thank you. All right, if I'm available, I may do that.
I have one question, just about where interest rates are going right now. It seems like they're headed downward. Have we done any comparison, or is there any way for us to put this off 6 months or a year? And yeah.
So that's an interesting question. The market believes that interest rates are going down, and because we're borrowing over an extended time, what the market believes the direction is going will ultimately end up being priced into the bonds. The things that we would worry about would be some sort of a shock or unforeseen event right before we were pricing. It is still a little bit of a crystal ball.
Yeah, President McCray, the bond markets have been relatively stable compared to sort of the inflationary pressures that we've seen. And also, I think Deborah was trying to explain that a lot like a stock, you're not buying it based on what you think today's value is, you're buying it for some future value. And so that is reflected in the fact that I think we're seeing 4 to 5% kind of ranges for people with our credit rating, as opposed to what you're seeing in the inflationary markets. So it, I think we're, somewhere between 4 and 5% is probably reasonable for at least expectations at this point. It doesn't look like in the next 6 months, the Fed is going to move significantly. I think they've indicated that their March meeting, they're not. Maybe in the summer they start to, but that would be, pre to that, people would be sort of making their assumptions when they go into the market and we do our pricing.
And yeah, and respectfully though, like 4 to 5%, right? That's a huge range on a 30-year on $60, right? I mean, it seems like a 1/4% here is basically real money.
For sure. And if there is reason for us to stay out of the market a little bit longer, we do have a little bit of flexibility there with rate stabilization and evaluating where we're at for our capital projects. But generally speaking, our concern, we have seen more favorable rates. For sure.
Yeah.
Our 2020 was
Yeah.
more favorable than that,
Yeah.
as was the massive refinance in.
Yeah. But it's good to know you have some flexibility and I appreciate that you all are paying attention to that and hopefully use the flexibility. It seems terrible.
We're looking back at 2012, we took the numbers map. What interest rate were we at 2012? That makes it favorable to refinance. Since, because this is, relatively high compared to years.
Depending on which maturity, the rates do vary, and I'm not sure that. Yeah, now, but we would not refinance unless it was favorable to us. And right now, the forecast is that it will be favorable to us. It was not the last time we refinanced.
And how, given that, I mean, we're 10, 12 years into that series. I mean, if we make the decision to do this and the rates go down, we could refinance again if it makes fiscal sense to do so. If rates drop significantly enough to make it work.
And our financial advisor and our underwriters are quick to communicate when they see those savings in the market. So when bonds are callable, we really start to look at what kind of savings that we could see.
Do we get any hurt from calling them back? Or do they kind of just understand that that's part of the financial process? These kinds of.
As long as they're callable, we can call them.
The call feature in terms of our issuance process, having a call feature on the bonds factors into that initial. So.
These callable, the new ones.
They will be.
Thank you for enduring our interrogation. Really appreciate all the answers and.
Always happy to answer questions. We will be back at a couple more points. On this.
Okay.
Do we need we do need a vote on that resolution.
Move to support resolution number 2402.
Moved by Carlson, second by Schlossberg. Any discussion? Support, say aye. Aye. Pass unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take a 10-minute break. Okay. That's not too bad, right? Even with all the initiatives agenda. And do you want, I mean, it says EWEB Board of Commissioners, so we can just host this ourselves, or do you want to do your preamble? How do you want to do this?
President McCray, just a quick preamble. We did have some discussion with this before, the background memo describing a few of the options that the board had talked about. This is really to provide guidance to the liaisons, which in this case is the president and the vice president, around topics that the board would like them to discuss with council leadership on an occasional basis. And this is really your discussion. We'll take notes and make sure that it's clear after the fact.
Great, thanks. So everybody has the memo that we were provided. I think we looked at this last month.
Date of that memo?
It's January 31st. Yeah.
I personally don't have anything to add to that list. I think it was a pretty comprehensive list and I'm still working on a number of the same items. So a lot of it is updates on what we're doing and then a continuation. Personally, have anything to add? I just support the list that we developed and continue to work on.
Yeah.
It may fall in here, but one of the topics that I met with last time with Commissioner Carlson was, and it's something we brought up here before, it was EV charging infrastructure. And I don't know if that would fall under the decarbonization bullet point or not, but I know that that's something that the city has asked us about, and we've also done. I don't know where it goes to, but it may be a bullet point that would be worth at least adding in there. Be under the decarb or
Isn't it in the silt?
well, yeah, that. That's a pipe dream thing, they're gonna spend it on.
Talks about EV charging, it talks about number 4.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, President McCray, that the discussions around SILT was I'll say it's a holdover from past discussions with this board. I think it would be appropriate to clarify when we talk about EV charging, what the city would look for in a relationship with EWEB, kind of a little bit more clear roles and responsibilities aspect to that. As you know, we do have a grant process. There's ways to look at funding. We do get some funding through the Clean Fuels program with the state that we allocate back to. Since that's based on the number of EVs, we try to allocate that back to EV related things. But I think from a staff perspective, we would want an understanding of what the city's looking for versus what they're expecting EWEB to bring to that. So a little bit more of a definition there.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Just, I mean, they ask about, oh, what are you guys doing on EV charging? It's a liaison thing. It's not, we're not making policy or funding issues, but letting them know where we are on those things. That's why I think it would be just a talking point.
Mindy.
We have under programs of public interest and potential partnership, resiliency. And I'm just wondering at your next meeting or something, just talking about disaster. I don't know if there's anything in disaster preparedness or something, but just kind of talking about maybe there's some opportunities there.
I like the list and everything. I just, hopefully we can get into a discussion about some of them, because like on that, using silt increases in silt compensation in lieu of taxes, we pay 6% of our revenue to the city. But so we can prioritize those. For me, I would much rather the money go to giving incentives to the rental pool to weatherize than EV charging. If I had to pick one or the other, I'd want the rental pool, because they're the people that probably more challenged with our increases than people that can afford EVs. And so I would hope that we could focus on that as a priority. And then the resiliency thing, disaster preparedness, somehow get the word out better than it is on our waters, our emergency water stations, because if, like you say, we got a 2-day supply and then we're going to be out for 2 months, and how are people going to survive? And they don't know, 90% of the people, 95% of the people I talk to don't know that we have these emergency water stations stationed around with pumps and the ability, and it's there, but it's no good if it's there, if people don't know it's there. And in an emergency, we're not going to be able to communicate. If we have a big earthquake, we're not, we got to get that word out now and tell people where to go to get water. And so I would hope we can emphasize that with the city. And then lastly, we're going to have a discussion about adding things to the EWEB bill. I really want to talk about that as a board, because right now it's an EWEB bill and 2 of those 4 charges aren't ours. And we get blamed, we get laid with the grief about my EWEB bill is increasing, and when they're increasing stormwater and wastewater, nothing to do with us, but we get tagged with it. So I want to talk about that at great length.
Yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner Brown, I did have a discussion with City Manager Maderi about some of the exploration. It's true exploration at this point around sources of revenue or methods of revenue for the city. If it looks like it's the option that EWEB could be a potential channel, I did invite City Manager Maderi to come and discuss that with the board. So that invitation is open, depending on their approach and her schedule. I would work with President McCray to figure out where to get that on the agenda. Historically, the city has used SILT for their general fund. That's been, I'll say, an area where they feel like it's their decision to spend that accordingly, and not for EWEB to provide guidance on where and how that is spent. It's also something that's part of how the SILT agreement, which goes back decades, was eventually agreed to. And so it is a requirement that we have, and it's 6% of revenue. I have not talked with the city about, I'll say, non-revenue work that EWEB might be incorporating into their rates, but that's something that might be something that we could bring up. I'll leave that one vague.
Do you know if the council can choose to add another expense to our bill without the board? Is that possible?
So the way that, and I can't remember whether this is a charter or a code, city code issue, that EWEB has to agree. There's no choice for EWEB when it comes to, I think it's fluid management services or something, which would be stormwater and wastewater. We are obligated to provide that collection method. Beyond those two, it is at the discretion of the EWEB board if there are other fees that the city would propose to us that we act as their collection agent on. But those two are required.
Right,
I'm good. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
This question. I'm curious if there are any policy goals or themes that we have that baked into here. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to think about projects at staff level, but I'm curious if I'm not coming up with any policy agenda where there's really thing where we might work with the council itself. Use this as a way to advance policies that we're working. Other than actually this, revenue collection. It's like it's a place to engage with them for sure, but if there are other things on your radar?
Not from a policy perspective, I think one of the areas that we're trying to provide much more direct feedback to the mayor and council on is through our climate guidebook and the specific results that are associated with the EWEB, what EWEB work is associated with the goals they have around the climate action plan. And we work really closely with city staff on how those are measured and what categories those are in. And we'll be providing an update with our 2023 results sometime this spring. But that's at the tactical execution level. It's not at the policy level, but those are the kinds of things. And then we work very closely with the city on the schedules associated with street repairs and things that our mutual agencies are needing to coordinate on. There could be, there may be one thing that would, I think, be at a policy level. We do eventually have to make some changes to the public facility services plan, which will need council approval, city of Springfield approval, and Lane County approval for our to change the metro plan that facilitates our building of a second water treatment plant on the Willamette, and that will be something that we will need policy collaboration with between council and the board, and it would be very helpful to bring that up in the leadership discussion.
Yeah, I propose we add that here tonight to start.
Yeah, we can start with that.
Yeah. All right, so I'm hearing support for what's here. I'm not hearing anybody suggesting we remove anything. Hearing some extra emphasis on some of the items and some work on the second water intake. It's mostly land use there, right? Anything else? Is that good?
I think you need to actually, this is an action item.
Yeah.
I would suggest in the motion that you add support for changes to the public facility service plan as part of the motion to add that. I think that's a very specific policy objective that I would recommend you add at this point.
Okay.
Move to add the purpose to the.
Not the purpose.
Public service.
Public facility services.
Yeah, my F is just with the P.
Okay.
That's like,
that's close enough.
Pfeiffer, you know. Perfect. I move to add that to the policy, to the agenda.
Second.
Right, everybody in support, say aye. All right, so we're adding that and then I'm making any other changes. Is that sufficient for your needs?
I think now we need to move to approve the city of Eugene liaison agenda.
Okay. All right.
Second.
Moved by Fosberg, seconded by Carlson. Discussion. I can. Unanimously. All right, moving on to the next item, the McKenzie Valley meeting and planning.
So President McCray, Commissioners, good evening again. For the audio record, this is Frank Lawson, General Manager. You received some information in your General Manager's report about potential changes to the upcoming McKenzie Valley meeting. We do, on an annual basis, have a special board meeting, traditionally a board meeting without approved actions, but as a work session, the opportunity to meet with part of our extended territory up the McKenzie Valley. The formats for that meeting, go ahead, next slide, please, Holly. The format for that meeting has evolved and changed some through the years. Some of the things that we've received feedback on from past meetings is that the format that we have doesn't necessarily facilitate a very good dialogue between commissioners and those who have particular interests that they would want to talk to commissioners about. It becomes a bit frustrating both from a governance side, from your side, being able to have a dialogue as opposed to be the recipient of a lot of input. And also from a customer perspective, I don't think it facilitates it. So, and yet we also have a lot of really good things to communicate. EWEB has a very strong presence in the McKenzie Valley. We have since 1911, when we built our first, one of the first power generating facility. It's our drinking water source. We've been very instrumental in both the electric side and the water side in the McKenzie Valley, with lots of different programs and opportunities for our customers in that area. So there's an opportunity here that we need to look at as how we interact with that. One of the suggested ideas, and this is again for you to deliberate on, is potentially looking at something as more of an open house dinner approach. If you've attended, the analogy that I would use is if you've attended the major customer luncheon, something a little bit more along those lines, as opposed to providing just an open mic platform for people. Questions could be gathered, consolidated, either responded to formally at the meeting or informal or formally after the meeting. But it would give an opportunity for commissioners to have direct interaction with those who are from that area who would choose to attend. And so this was a little bit more of a different format and approach to it. Some of the topics that we see as relevant, some of these are similar to past meetings that we've had up there. There's a lot of watershed work. Some of that is recovery from the wildfire. Some of it is ongoing management. We have some large projects that are in different states of development, the Carmen Smith relicensing, the decision to decommission the Lieberg hydroelectric project, another one, prepared an ice storm. There's a lot of wildfire mitigation. There's a lot of topics that are relevant. So we'd like to get your feedback on if there's one or two of these that you feel like are more important than the others. Not that this is necessarily a democratic process in what those are going to be, but just to get a flavor for your topics. But this is an opportunity for you to have a discussion and provide management with feedback on your thoughts around the format, your thoughts around the topics. We may have to look at the location depending on how many people show up for dinner. That's something that we'll have to take into consideration. But anyway, we wanted to present this idea to you and get your feedback. And with that, President McCray, I'll just turn it back to you and listen.
John?
I already know who's going to sit at my table and what the topic's going to be. So Lieberg decommissioning, and I'm going to have to get staff to give me talking points, because when they say, how come you're tearing the dam out? I say, well, the feds say you have to if you're not going to put water to generate power. And they say, well, have you asked them to move? I mean, it's going to circular conversation, and I'm going to, it can go sideways real quick. But that's the real in the living room. I mean, all this other stuff is important, but what all our probable participation has been about. They're mad, and this is going to be a really good venue for them to express their frustration. And so I want to listen, and I want to make sure we listen and they feel they've been heard. But I want to make sure that people like myself, we probably have 5 different answers to the same question, and we have to speak, I think, with a common voice or whatever, because we will get divided. And I think that would be really important. And then the other thing that I didn't see there is we did the cost of service allocation, and we said 14% for the Upriver residents, and that has died. It's not been talked about, but I know Will Rutherford and others are really against that. And they don't like the fact that they pay 6% of their bill that goes to the city general fund. They get no benefit from it. And so those types of things to me are gonna be, things that come up. I mean, it's,
So first of all, on your talking points, I think it is important that we develop a consistent understanding as to why certain decisions are made and how we communicate those. So I think that's important. I think we all have slightly different perspectives on that decision and how we came to it, and we need to maintain that integrity. But there are, in the case of your example about why the dam has to come out, there's some very specific reasons for why that is not just a good choice, it's also probably an inevitable choice. So I think that that's understood, and we'll make sure that there's plenty of time to prepare for whatever topics we think are going to come our direction. The other one relative to an upriver rate is something that we planned on having a discussion around when we had more detailed discussion around rate design. It is something where that's a particular area that has a higher cost to serve. I think it's not illogical to think that if you add 2 hours of time and travel to service an area that's right off the top, as well as tree trimming and some of the other things that are very intense in that area, that there would be a difference in the cost basis to serve that area. Similar to what we do with pumping charges in the city of Eugene, there's very distinct costs associated with living at elevation versus at the base valley level. But rather than deal with that as a distinct separate subject, our preference would be to have it in the context of overall rate design and at what levels and how do we look at cost distinction and how do we account for that. So that has not been lost. It is, so it hasn't been forgotten, but I think we feel it's better discussed in the context of rate design in general.
and lastly, is it appropriate to invite Steve Morkahysky or somebody from the county or Heather, Commissioner Buck, because that transportation thing is huge about if we tear that dam out, they don't have a bridge across the river. How do they get to their properties? And that's not our problem. But we have somebody there to help take that away from our conversation. That to me would be very helpful. So go ahead and count it. They're the ones who have to provide that. That's not us.
I think if there's certain partners that the commissioners would like to invite, we would certainly welcome their attendance. I know that the emergency manager a few years ago attended the Upriver meeting, and that was helpful to get the county's perspective during some of the Q&A that came up around emergency preparedness. And so I think that's appropriate in this case as well. And whether it's the administrator, Morkahysky, or someone else, it would be an appropriate person from the county that we would invite.
Yeah, Mindy.
So I'm a little mixed. I think that if we didn't have a highly contentious issue going on, where there were a group of angry people, like people who focus on a singular issue and they're really unhappy with us, I think that obviously they can talk to us about what's frustrating. But when I think about last year's Upriver meeting, at that meeting, there were other people that wanted to speak about other topics, and there wasn't really a space for it because there were so many people that came to really just talk about the decommissioning. And I do fear that if we have this format, that again, it could be overrun with that. And again, people who are opposed to decommissioning absolutely have the right to tell us what they're thinking or talk to us about it. But I want to make sure that it doesn't just turn into that, but that there's space for people that are interested in other topics or have things that they want to share. So I do worry a little bit about that. I like the idea of it being more informal and more relaxed and less like us up there, you know, it just feels like us against them. This is really not what we want at all. So I don't know, I'm just a little mixed.
Yeah. I think, Commissioner, that's one of the reasons that we wanted to explore the format change was we felt like the controlling the environment a little bit more would facilitate some of the quieter issues as opposed to the issue of the day. The opportunity to interact with commissioners one-on-one and truly interact as opposed to seeing the formal stage and that, as well as having an opportunity to have your questions addressed, not just whoever writes the most bold question on a piece of paper, but look at the different variety of questions that come up, I think is another way of encouraging people to speak out. Our intent is to potentially bring out voices that were drowned out in the former format. And so that's why it's not just one format throughout the meeting. There's an open house piece, there's a dinner piece, opportunity to interact, and then there's the opportunity to have a Q&A presentation. So we're trying to actually mix 3 different formats in a meeting, hopefully to give all people the opportunity to interact. The other thing that is still valid is that, and I think sometimes I know I lose this occasionally. All of you are very accessible, directly through email, anytime. So it's hard when you hear a customer say, "Oh, we can't." There are lots of ways to get commissioners their message and have an interaction. You're very accessible to people on their terms also. So this is a way to organize, to Commissioner Brown's point, organize some thoughts and messages, potentially control that in a way that doesn't facilitate misinformation, which I think was one of the things we found last year. There were things that were said that were just blatantly incorrect. At the same time, providing some people the opportunity to express themselves. So I think that's our intent, Commissioner.
Well, and I really like the idea of pairing a staff person with us because oftentimes we get asked technical questions, which we may or may not know the answer to. And that's when sometimes we inadvertently promulgate things that we shouldn't because we misspeak or something like that. So I think having a staff person with us. And in terms of the topics, I think that absolutely people are going to want to talk about that. I do think that the ice storm, that will be on people's minds. Wildfire mitigation. I don't know. We don't often get questions on Carmen Smith status. Occasionally we do. Maybe watershed recovery. I feel like we hear from our partners in watershed recovery, but I don't know how many questions or concerns we get from folks up there.
When you raised the topic about, different people not being drowned out, it made me wonder if there was an opportunity to use there's that bigger room in the back, or if people want to talk specifically about labor, that maybe that is after you do the presentations and then, dinner kind of mingling, then, and you do a presentation, you talk about here's, what we have. Okay, now you're going to break out into different groups. One of the groups is, a labor topic in a separate space, and then maybe some of the ones that are quieter stay in that same room. I don't know. I mean, then there's a rotation of sorts, the commissioners in the different topics. I don't know if that's helpful or not. It's just something that idea made me think of. I think it would be great to have more informal conversations because being able to, just having somebody stand up and say the 3 minutes, it's so awkward and it changes the room and then it riles other people up and you can't have the actual dialogue with them. So I really appreciate that staff are thinking about this.
Thanks. I think it would be helpful if we could lean into our partners a little bit more in the presentations as well. I'm thinking directly, I mean, when we talk about watershed recovery and pure water partners and stuff, we've got staff that have done that presentation now for 4 or 5 years. If we could have some of our partners that are utilizing those programs, and I'm thinking Jared from McKenzie Watershed Council, some people from the trust get up there and talk, because those people have, one, they live up there, they work up there every day, and they've got gravitas with the people that are up there, more so than somebody that may have an EWEB badge on their thing. So if we could lean into some of those partners, I mean, if we talked to Jared at McKenzie Watershed Council and said, could you just give 5 minutes on what EWEB, some of the programs that EWEB has helped initiate upriver, I think it would be received a little bit better than if it was, not that our staff isn't doing a good job of putting that message up there, but I know when I'm sitting in that room with those people, like this Thursday, I'll be sitting in that room with those people. And the people that are also in that room, resident partners up there, there's guides, so these people have good working relationships with people up there. So that would be something that I would hope we can maybe lean into on some of the presentations. And also, I don't know if we need to go into the whole redesign conversation at this point, because we're not ready to, but teeing it up a little bit, maybe just saying, as a EWEB as a whole, we're looking at this so that it's not, once we go and start doing rate design later this fall and next spring, it's going to be a year before we go back up there and they're going to say, wait a second, how did you guys decide on this? And just letting them know that maybe, rate design is something that we're looking through as an organization, and it may have an impact on your class of customers, just even at that level, so that, when it comes up on our agenda, they may know to look in on it and maybe want to give us feedback. That's just something, kind of a trust issue that we have, because we only do go up there once a year. I know that they can reach out to us and they can watch our things and do all of that, but it's still our one-on-one contacts are yearly, basically. And so if there's a way to tee that up in a non-adversarial way, that might be helpful.
So I have just a few thoughts. I likewise am grateful that we're thinking about a different format. I actually think skipping presentations altogether might be helpful. I just think it can create an awkward dynamic, and having something that's just open house, where we're all available to talk with people about whatever they're interested in, and we have staff on hand to speak to all of the issues, especially Lieberg, hoping Lisa and Mark will be there. They need to be there. If they can't be there, we need to reschedule. I think that gives us an opportunity for staff to answer questions while we're there hearing people's concerns, and it could be on all the topics, and all of us could move around to wherever it seems like, there's the most interest, or wherever we have questions. Anyway. A couple of the topics that I think would be interested are preparedness and wildfire mitigation. I think those are both going to be interesting. And of course, Lieberg. I don't know if people are going to be willing to or ready to engage in rate design until we give them a number. I think like as soon as we start saying, here's what this means to you and your bill, we don't know if it feels like it's a very difficult exercise that is going to really engage people the way their programs that we have might. Anyway, I know you just got a bunch of different feedback from all of us, so I'm not sure that gets you what you need.
President McCray, I'm used to it, just so you know. I mean, 5 different people, 5 different opinions. I think that having partners involved, I think those are good ideas. We are even looking at Adam Spencer as a if there's an opportunity to MC or facilitate questions, if it's a little bit beyond an open. He's a resident up there. He's lived up there his whole life. He knows people there. But we're very cognizant of the trust issue, the insider kind of issue. Some of the issues are more informative than they are decision oriented. And I'll use rate design as an example. People will speak out against rate design if their rates are going to go up. That's the feedback that you're going to get. It's not going to be, it's unfair if my rates go up. But like a lot of decisions that this board has to make, you have to look at equity across the entire service territory, city of Eugene and Upriver. And so now teeing it up for context that, hey, these are some of the things we're going to look at as part of rate design makes some sense. But if we get in too much specifics too soon, it's going to be, well, I don't like that result, so I'm going to challenge the process. And if you challenge the process and that doesn't work, then you discredit the people who are driving the process. So there's this chain that can occur. I do think it's probably appropriate to highlight that this discussion is coming, but it's coming at a broader level. We're not isolating one group saying, we're going to change your rates. We're looking at how we appropriately design our rates to facilitate the long-term outcomes of the organization and for the better of the community. That's a different way of framing it up. And I think that's probably appropriate, if that's what you meant. So I think there is an opportunity to just look at this differently. I'm hearing some receptiveness to, yeah, we think the format that we use probably wasn't as inviting and productive as it should be. That more of an open house dialogue, engagement opportunity is better. This is 3% of the territory, and you devote a significant amount of time to meet this part of our customer base on their terms, and I think that's worth noting. So, Rod maybe Anne, was anything else that would be valuable feedback? I know Anne and our communications team have been really taking a hard look at this. Jen's hiding in the back. Been looking at how we approach this to be just more helpful to commissioners and our customers. And so I don't know if there was anything else that specifically Anne or even Jen, you can yell from the back, that might be valuable to know from commissioners.
I think everything's really been covered well. We plan to do the same informational flyer in advance. So folks will have a takeaway where they can get some updates on Carmen Smith and some of the things that we may not go into detail with at the meeting, aside from having a tabling for it. So there'll be other ways that people can get information too in writing and online. Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, I just got the river reflection just came out this evening, and there was a story about septic need to fix. EWEB expands a grant program. So apparently we have $1 million in ARPA money that expires, use it or lose it in September, for replacing up to $35,000 per septic system up there. That's what this article says. If that's true, can we really promote this? Because I mean, you know, septic systems are the biggest threat to our watershed, and we can replace them, and we've got this money and use it or lose it. I know
There's an opportunity here, and we'll talk to our.
Yeah, I just want to steer if that's available.
I'm not sure I would agree. It's the biggest threat to the water. It's certainly a threat to the water. There's
programs, you know that.
Oh, it's what your thing. So, but yeah, we'll take a look at the communications. If there's money that expires, it's definitely important to.
Yeah, I know all the ARPA money goes away in September to a lot of people and are scrambling to figure out how to spend it. It's just to say, the article does say that it's part of ARPA and it's $1 million.
It is, it does.
It is.
The good people at Lane County help me.
John,
sounds like our communications is doing good. It's made it to the paper.
Commissioner Brown, I'm getting lots of head nods. Yes, that's correct. And then we'll seize that as an opportunity.
Let's use that to replace all those septic tanks that aren't working up there.
That's what we're doing.
Good.
Yeah, yeah, but EWEB's doing amazing work to get septic systems replaced.
Commissioner McCray is personally digging the holes himself.
I am digging
What I'm hearing.
I'm just curious, in the past, when we created the loan program for generators, I wonder if that's going to be a part of the, I know it's in May, but maybe it'll still be fresh enough in people's minds, having the ice storm and being out to remind them that we've had this program for a number of years. And I'm also just curious how many people have taken advantage of it and used it to support them, because I know we say rely on us, but they're upriver and there's lots of trees and they're very far away and there's often so much damage up there. We can't get up there for days and days and days. So we recognize that this was a situation and a difference, and I would think it would be important to highlight that and share.
I agree, Commissioner. I think when we talk about preparedness takes on a different level when you're living in a remote area like that. And we will certainly make sure people are aware of all of the things that we do to help facilitate preparedness, including that program. And you will get sort of what the latest numbers are for participants in our year-end report. So you'll get some visibility on where we are with that. But I think in our after action reporting, we're going to have to look, and that right now is residential only. Do we expand that? Do we look at that a little bit differently? So it's, but yes, as far as upriver preparedness has to be a topic that we provide a lot of information on.
One left.
Well, you can do the last one, but I'll do one before then. And then, yeah, so in terms of partners, we have a new county emergency manager. I think it'd be good to extend the invite to her. I also think Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, with the Libra impacts on the hatchery there, and other impacts on fish, it might be useful to have ODF and W there. What do you think, John?
I'm getting feedback, Lane Electric is undergrounding a lot of rural stuff, and I've had several people say, how come you're not undergrounding? They are. And help them, just don't have to answer it now, but just be able to answer that question of how can Lane Electric underground their rural facilities and we don't? Because they are doing it.
We'll take a little more time to answer that one.
Just a quick thought too, you mentioned communicating with folks upriver, or somebody did, I can't remember who, but that's a challenge, right? And so it's different than communications in town. And so there's a handful of folks and that we've talked to, getting ideas about how we can better communicate, like signage or whatever. Good opportunity to talk to people and get ideas around that.
In terms of letting people know this meeting is happening.
Happening, but during an emergency, how do you communicate with people when the power's out? The internet's out, is different, the water systems it's a different culture up there, and they have water systems and all those kind of things that, anyway, during outages, we're struggling how to best reach out to people. So I've been sort of on the side collecting ideas. Janine Parisi, and has been working with Robin and some folks from communications teams trying to throw some ideas together. So
I think that would be a listening thing. Say, where did you get information? Did you go down to Lieberg store? Did you go to Dakota's? Where did you guys get your information when you had no phone, no internet, and no power? So that we can get the information to those touch points.
I thought something too that we should later this week.
Perfect.
Yeah. Anything else on this topic? What do you need?
I hope so. Yes, I did. Thank you.
All right, future board agendas. Anything you want to cover here, or do you just questions from the?
Just if there's any questions, we did, Commissioner Carlson, we wanted to make sure you were available for the Upriver meeting. I think someone said you denied the invitations. Oh, I just wanted to make sure that we can follow up separately for that, but I don't have any further details on the board agenda report.
Okay. Any questions about Anybody else? All right, board wrap up. You want to start?
No, good, thank
All
you.
right. Nothing new. From me, I am excited to have new audio and visual, or is it just audio in this room? I'm looking forward to having tools to make it easier. Is there a time frame for install?
We couldn't get it done this time, so let's think about this. For sure by, I'm not gonna say for sure on anything. We're still waiting some key
It
parts.
was in
We
the,
saw the TVs. Yeah.
it's somewhere between, the equipment is scheduled to arrive somewhere between March and April.
Okay.
There's some things going on in here that we can't disrupt, so it could be March, but more than likely April. But anyway, that's target at the moment. There was one long lead time item that was delaying things.
Okay.
Just real quick, I'd just like to acknowledge there's some U of L students here from the journalism class, and thank you very much for staying through it. I mean, you really got it out, because I sometimes want to get up and leave early myself. So thank you for showing interest in what we're talking.
Since they stayed to the end, do we get like more likes or something, more advertising dollars or something?
Yeah, I just like to acknowledge what they're doing and everything. Thank you, and good luck.
Yeah, a couple of quick items. After the ice storm too, there's some thoughts on, again, if we have an emergency event like this, how do we as a community work together and utilize our public assets? So are we partnering with schools? Are we partnering with, I don't know, we had stores that had tons and tons of food that went bad. I know this is not an energy sort of thing, but it is a community sort of thing, and EWEB is very good at reaching out and working with our partners. And I just want to, again, think about creative ways that we utilize the resources in the community to provide shelters, to get food to places where people need it. And so I just want to know what venue we have right now where these different groups, these public assets are actually talking and making these kind of communications happen.
We can follow up more specifically, but I know that, I believe that there's I think it's within the county, a resiliency task force group where I know after the event, there was discussions around schools and other things. We're part of that group. And so.
So are we going to have like a community hot wash event after?
I don't know specifically, but I know that we'll follow up and see what the plans are from the county. So that'll be our follow-up item to check out on that.
And then we have the river trip at the end of May, and I know in the past we've had some input discussion about who we're inviting, and I haven't seen that yet. So is there a list that's already been developed? Any discussion around that? When are we gonna send invites? Because it's not that far in the future.
We don't have a list at this point. We can follow up and see if commissioners have particular targets. That's probably not the correct word. Don't write that one down. So we'll follow up with a game plan for that. Great, I'm gonna be quoted as.
No, our partners, our friends.
Yes, our partners and our friends. That's
targets.
Invites, yes. Oh, you and your utility speak. Okay, that's actually all I have. Thank you.
We have 30 million gallons of water on South Eugene and our new reservoirs.
That's still in process. We're still in the commissioning phase.
Correct.
Because then we filled them up and we're putting bubble gum in the leaks and we're so.
A little bit more than that.
That also doesn't go in writing, the bubble gum part.
Yeah, well, let's figure it, yeah.
No, the commissioning process is very detailed. We're in the process of that. We ran into a couple of issues. We want to make sure we address them now while the contractor is still under warranty. So we're being pretty meticulous in how we approach that. So.
Right.
And we've communicated with the Oregon Health Authority around all this, so they're quite aware of what's going on.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Very good. That's from you, Frank?
I hope not.
All right. Well, you adjourned.